Now, Chris, I want to talk to you today about several things, but I want to begin with right now what's going on in your life. Many of us in this room have prayed for you when we found out in early of January in 2016 that you were diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. And I think it would be only appropriate today to start there, because I want you to give us an update about how you're doing and where you are in this healing process.
Well, yeah, we'll speak in the present day, present tense, which is I'm still in treatment because I had a little bit of a setback in a scan in November where they discovered that the throat cancer I had, which was a pretty progressive, an aggressive stage 4, that they had pretty much radiated and chemoed out of me, had metastasized to my left lung. So I'm in treatment right now for some malignancies in my left lung. It's not lung cancer. I had to have them explain that to me. It's a recurrence of metastasis of what I had previously. So they're actually trying immunotherapy on me, which is kind of an exciting new frontier that has really developed in the past few years. And I just finished my 4th cycle. We've had a scan. I'm responding well. The nodules, malignant nodules in my lung are actually reduced in size. So praise God for that. I think I've got about 8 to 10 more left before then it's Plan B or Plan C. Plan D is not a good one. Plan D is that video again. Only I'm not going to be there. So, yeah. And the other thing is that so I'm going through it, and it's got fewer side effects. I've got a pretty good energy right now about me, so I'm living life.
Amen. Well, you know, you really sound good. I want you to know that, and you look great, and we're so grateful that you're here today, and I really mean that. And when you think about where you've been, and you think about, you know, what's going on in your body, what are they telling you about how much more treatments, what's before you? Next week you go to a treatment, don't you?
I do. It's a dangerous question because, you know, I have a little bit of a sense of humor. I have a young person at ESPN, actually been there 10 years, but I'll bring in, his name's Joey Roberts. And Joey I'm very close to. Mickey can tell you he's almost like family. And but he knows anything can come out of my mouth. That's not necessarily a good thing. But he asked me, you know, after a scan in November, he asked me, he said, what'd they tell you? He couldn't wait for me to tell him. I said, well, they told me I'm going to die. And there's this dead silence on the end of the phone, and I realized that's pretty cruel for me to tell him. I said, but you know what? You're going to die too, Joey. He said, we're all dying. I said, from the day we come out of the womb, we start the process. We're living, but we're dying. And I just, you know, I filled them in. But, you know, they're optimistic. You know, they were disappointed like I was when we had the setback. Sure. You know, that was, so, I mean, that's the thing about my oncology team is terrific. They tell you what you need to know. They answer your questions. And I think there's a part of them that protect you what you really don't want to know because they want your attitude to be in the right place as you go through this journey.
That's right. That's great. And I want to go back to that moment in January of 2016 when you learned that you had stage 4 throat cancer. That obviously was an unforgettable moment and really changed the trajectory of your life immediately. So what was that like for you and your family in that moment?
Well, you know, I have an ear, nose, and throat specialist, Dr. James Ragland, who's here in Rogers, and I had been ignoring some symptoms throughout the season. The problem with it was in January of 2016, we have our football season. We don't have time for our health or anything else. We work, you know, doing that 6 a.m. to midnight thing, and I'd been ignoring some symptoms that could no longer be ignored. I won't get into those, but went in there, and within 15 or 20 minutes, he'd pretty much say, you know, I got news for you, not good news. And he said, you know, you have stage 4 throat cancer. And he said, now we'll do the lab work, we'll do the path work, but I'm telling you, that's what you have. And of course, the lab work came back right away, and so I had maybe 15 to 30 seconds of being stunned, because he said, look, you're in for a challenging year or two, and he said, so he gave me a few suggestions, and then it was really a matter of breaking the news to Mickey and the rest of the family. And that day, and I want to say it was January 7th or 6th of 2016, that day was probably a memorable day, emotional day, probably more so for Mickey than me, because you go home and how do you break the news to your wife, your spouse, that you've got this? And when I told her, she literally crumpled to the ground and cried out to God, no, 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 God, no. And I was fine. That's the thing about it. But when you see them in that type of pain, and then and she ran outside, and I would say that went on for about 30 or 45 minutes, and I was just trying to reassure her that I was going to be fine and I wasn't going to die. That's kind of the attitude I had. But you understand on the other end of it, and then this is where God truly intervened, because we had closed on a house in Springdale Harbor area near Taneytown, 40 acres. We had, was it 4 or 5 horses, Mick, that we bought? Nice. Are you listening? Did we have 4 horses or 5 horses? I can't remember. 6. But in this moment of I would say emotional despair that she especially was experiencing, this is where God intervened, because I looked out the window, and for the first time the horses had gotten out of the pasture and they're running down the driveway. And I said, we got to get the horses in. And so there it was, and this is anybody who remembers Green Acres, that's what this was. This was like Green Acres, getting these horses in. And so we actually ended up having a laugh over it. There's a fine line between laughing and crying, and we experienced it all that day. And then it was a matter of coming up with a strategy on how we were going to break the news to our family, and first and foremost to our son. But he was getting ready. He was an offensive grad assistant at Alabama, getting ready to play Clemson in the national championship down in Arizona. And I was supposed to be doing studio work, so I went through this process of informing my employer, my supervisors, the president of ESPN, and asked them to keep it quiet. I was going to miss the studio show that week because I wanted to travel to Arizona and see the Monday night game between Alabama and Clemson. That's the game they won, by the way. And Mickey was reluctant. Mickey didn't like the idea because she didn't think I could handle going and not telling Alex, because I wasn't going to tell him. And I wasn't going to tell him after the game, win or lose. If you tell him after they lose, then it's like, kicking him when he's down. And if you tell them when they win, then it's like killing their joy. So, but I went. I was good, enjoyed the game. It was a championship. We got down on the field. We took some great photos together. And we waited about 3 days. We were going to have a public statement from ESPN on Friday, so it was a Thursday that we told him. And in typical Alex fashion, I knew he'd want a lot of answers, so I prepared he'd have a lot of questions, and basically told him, and then informed other family members, and then we made the announcement on that Friday. So, but it was kind of like, and the doctor said, we got to get rid of the tackle this thing. So that's what we did.
And then you went under treatment at MD Anderson Hospital in Houston,
Yes.
which, to me, one of the greatest decisions we made when Gina was diagnosed with cancer in 1990 was to go to MD Anderson Hospital in Houston. There's nothing like it.
Right.
And why don't you talk about what you found out about health and treatment and the people that God used to impact your life?
Well, I know this much. God gives us all gifts, but the people that He blessed in this field, I actually want to ask a question here first. Before I go on, how many people here have had cancer, or know somebody who's had cancer, or has a family member who's had cancer? Just how many hands? Yeah. Look at the hands around here. Yeah. So that was one of the things that I researched immediately, that I was not alone. I never went through after I looked at all the statistics and numbers, and of course, having interacted with people I knew who had cancer, there wasn't a why me element component to what I was going through. There was, it was more like why not me. Dumbest thing I ever said in the statement, by the way, at ESPN was I was looking forward to the experience. After going through the experience, no, I was not looking forward to that experience. But what I found, and I went to MD Anderson, is they assign a team of oncologists, three, primary, which was a medical, surgical, and a radiation oncologist. And Dr. Merrill Keys was my medical oncologist, Dr. David Rosenthal was my radiation oncologist, and Dr. Randall Weber was my surgical oncologist. All bright guys, and whenever, of course, the support staff is phenomenal, but whenever I was asked by somebody at MD Anderson, and it's a community at MD Anderson, if you've been there, you walk in there, I mean, the whole University of Texas Medical Center has got 22,000 employees, and then the number of cancer patients who are there, it's like you walk in every day, it's a community. And whenever anybody would ask me who my oncologists were, they would almost always say this. I mean, this came up 10, 12 times. They said, "Oh, you got the A team." I said, "Well, doesn't everybody get the A team?" They said, "But you really got the A team." and so what they do, they confer. They actually have a point where they confer with other oncologists. They look at all your data, all your lab work, everything that you're going through, and they come up with a treatment plan. But the treatment plan they want to start right away, and they want to try the extreme chemo, or very aggressive chemo first, and then take a little time out before we went into the radiation phase, and then determine whether I need surgery. So that was a phenomenal experience, which I would love to expound upon in terms of MD Anderson, but I think you're going to ask me something more about that, aren't you?
Well, Chris,
they're so thorough and detailed. It's just, and compassionate, that's the other thing, so.
Yeah, talk about that for a minute.
Well, the one thing that I experienced at MD Anderson, and I would say this, listen, knowing what our country seems to be experiencing and has experienced the last couple of years, the divide that we have, and maybe some angst and worry about who we are as a country, what direction we're headed. I know this much, my faith in humanity was restored at MD Anderson, because I'm not just talking about the doctors, but the support staff, the receptionists, the young professionals, the diversity, ethnicity, the ethnic groups that were represented who are working there, and they're so smart, they're so bright, they're so caring, they're so compassionate, that I felt like I experienced humanity at its finest. We're made in God's image, and there's a lot of facets of that. But one of it is we're a reflection of God's character. I experienced God's character through the people who worked and served at MD Anderson at some level. Not always at the highest level of oncology, but at almost every level. And I marveled at their love and compassion, caring, their excellence. And I also felt it even in my fellow cancer patients. I think I gained energy when I walked into MD Anderson. Because first of all, you realize you're not alone. You see some people who are worse off, and it gives you a chance to maybe put your own faith into practice. I mean, one time a man sitting there waiting to get, his chemo. He looked lonely. He looked a little stressed, and had a chance to go over and talk to him. He didn't have any family members there, and he was scared, and so he allowed me to pray with him. And then another time, I think if you've gone through chemo, you're always feeling like you're freezing. They have these nice warm blankets. They got heated up, But another time on a 75-degree day out on the bench right in front of MD Anderson, somebody was just shaking, freezing, a man, and not in great shape. But it allowed me to go get him a blanket. A simple thing is getting a blanket. So it allows you to practice your own humanity. You experience the humanity, but you're able to practice your own humanity in that environment, that community, a true community. And it really had been my home for the last 13 months.
That's an interesting insight about you literally experienced God's character through the people of compassion that God has put around you. And boy, that's very, very powerful. Chris, after going online and reviewing these initial moments of your diagnosis and your treatment, I mean, you really are regarded as a legend already.
I would
Pretty
object to
amazing.
that
No, you
description.
really do. I mean, it's
Legend
pretty
in my own
amazing.
mind, and sometimes, maybe that's it.
Well, you've given us all reason to believe that, and in a good way. But you have worked with some of the greatest athletes in the world, some of the greatest sports franchises in the world. I've been with you several occasions where you've received calls and text, and it's just so much part of your life. You say, well, that's so and so, or I'll just call him back. Oh man, don't do that. Call him. I want to talk to him. So, but anyway,
It's true. And if it, from the Cowboys, definitely he wanted to talk. It was Jerry Jones. Let's talk to Jerry.
but how has ESPN and all the National Football League, its players and coaches and owners, how have they responded to you in this moment?
Well, first and foremost, for ESPN, and I've been there 26 years, will be starting my 27th year in April. I could not have experienced more love and support unconditionally. It's like whatever you need. In fact, they were very proactive in getting me set up at MD Anderson through the V Foundation, where ESPN is obviously very involved, and so their support has been unwavering. I mean, unwavering, and Mickey can attest to that, certainly. The NFL support, because that happens to be the league that I cover for ESPN, whether it be, the commissioner or the executive director of the NFL Players Association, Roger Goodell, or DeMaurice Smith, or players like Larry Fitzgerald on TV after a game, actually all of a sudden just blurted out, stay strong, Mort, on national TV, and from Peyton Manning, many others. I mean, NFL owners, and I'd be leaving out so many names, but guys like Arthur Blank from the Falcons, who's a good friend, or Jerry Jones, who's been great. And I think the most touching letter I received was from Clark Hunt, who's the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs, and in that letter he just shared. I mean, first of all, he was very gracious in that letter, but he also was able to speak to his dad, Lamar Hunt, who's, Lamar Hunt's on the name of the AFC Championship trophy, because his dad succumbed to cancer, and I was very close to his dad, kind, gentle, humble man. But Chuck Pagano from the Indianapolis Colts, he's somebody who experienced leukemia, and that was a well-publicized battle he had. Tom Coughlin, who has his own leukemia foundation, pediatric leukemia, he's just been a source of strength and inspiration. There's an NFL referee named Tony Corrente who actually had a very similar cancer that I had and was treated at MD Anderson, and we hooked up, and everybody, and and there's people here who say, hey, I had what you have. It's very personal to you. I think every cancer is personal to yourself. But Tony had every description he gave me was perfect. No, by the way, when I asked him which doctors he had the same 3 doctors I had. So, then it's just, hey, it's good friends. It's Chris Berman, it's Tom Jackson, it's Merrill Hodge, who's went through lymphoma, so Adam Schefter, Ed Werder, who lost a son-in-law to cancer at 31 years old. People that I prayed for. So it's the whole community in the National Football League and ESPN and others, and overwhelming. I'm kind of in the process of returning many text messages and emails, but I'm about 800 behind in responding and replying to them.
When you look and think back through the course of the last 13, 14 months, any 2 or 3 of those really stand out to you that were just extraordinarily special? Yeah, you mentioned the referee, obviously, which was a dynamic teamship there between you two. Anything else?
Well, I think if people know me, well, they also know that I'm close to the Manning family themselves. Archie Manning is a good friend, and then obviously, and then I got to know his boys, his wife Olivia, and Peyton actually retired, yeah. and I, right in the early stages of my treatment when I wasn't doing so well, and Peyton had, he actually called me up to 2 days before he retired on a Saturday and said, I'm just calling a small group of people, letting them know I'm doing this. And then near the end of it, he goes, you want to break that story? And it's kind of like he's throwing me a bone, feeling sorry for me. And I said, well, sure, I'm not working, but sure, I'll do that. He goes, I just need you to sit on it for tonight. He goes, because I want to go out and have dinner with a bunch of friends, teammates, and family members, and just have one last night as an NFL quarterback. And then if anybody saw the Gatorade commercial, Gatorade did a salute to Peyton, because Peyton is one of those handwritten note guys, and they asked me to participate. So that was kind of special, and that was when I think I was bald then. You lose your hair a little bit when you go through that, but that was a special moment. But and Tom Jackson, when he came down, Tom Jackson, somebody who played with the Denver Broncos for 14 years, was at ESPN for 29 years. He, if I had to name my three best friends, he would fall into that category. And Tom came down early for one of my chemo treatments, and Tom's such a great personality, and he'll talk to anybody about anything. I mean, anything. And I can remember Tom came down, sat through me with the treatment, we visited for 2 or 3 days, and then he went home, and then when I went back in the next time, which is 4 or 5 days later, it wasn't like, hey, how you doing? It was like, hey, where's Tom? Like, let me be, where's So Merrill Hodge came down. I had a lot of people who wanted to come down, Phil Simms and others, but there came a point where I just wanted to cut. Eventually, you don't fight cancer alone. God does the fight. And I didn't resent, but I don't like the whole cliche or mantra of kick cancer's butt. They use another word for butt. Just because I figured out cancer actually kicks your rear end, but God, in His healing power and grace, He fights that battle for you. I did learn that because and the prayers of others, because you get to a point where you're so weak, where you actually feel. Some people, I think, draw closer to the Lord. There are times when I felt like it was more distant from the Lord. And that's when you realize that His grace is sufficient, that God is enough. And then the prayers of people, and I know there were countless people who prayed for me because I've made this progress. I've come through this. And there were times when I even asked Mickey, would you pray? Would you pray for me? And my wife has her hand up in the air right now. We only have so much time, Mick. Dr. James Dobson and Shirley Dobson, they reached out, and Dr. Dobson had been through his cancers and strokes, and he felt the same way, where he just, you need people to pray for him.
That's right.
And so, too many wonderful experiences. It's a book. I don't know if I ever get around to writing a book of what I experienced through God's grace, but I found out more than anything that His grace is sufficient, even, and obviously in my weakest moments.
Yeah. In
my weakest moments, especially. I can't say that it was always. There were times when you're curled up in bed and you're praying, and I think the one prayer that I probably had more than anything is, did I really run the race the way the Lord wanted me to run it? And my prayer has been, let me finish this race. Let me finish it stronger. I don't think I'm finishing this. I don't think this race is finished the way you want me to finish it. So let me finish this race. That's my selfish prayer, anyways.
Well, Chris, I mentioned this to you yesterday on email or text. I really believe God is creating a new message in your heart and in your life, in the narrative of your life, because you are identifying with pain, not by choice, but...
I said I was looking forward to the experience.
Yeah. But it's the whole element of being people here today. We're never going to look at you the same when we see you back on camera. Not because of anything other than he's a real guy. We need to pray for him. and we need to support him. And what a great honor you've been today, even to the Lord in your testimony. But I want to get to a little bit of football before we go by.
Oh, I know you would.
Today. And because there are people here today that they came thinking that we were going to talk only football. And we normally do that if we do one of these.
Yes,
but,
we do.
And we'll do that in the future.
You know, Pastor Floyd's a frustrated coach, and that's
right.
That's what he wanted to be.
There's
That's
no
what
doubt
that's what
about
I
that.
was going to do, by the way. I just took a left turn in the journalism. That's all.
Hey, man, I can't help it. I tell people, you know, I grew up in Texas. I know that that's offensive to some of you folks from Arkansas, but I grew up about 90 miles from the University of Texas, and I grew up really believing I wanted to be a football coach, and my goal was I wanted to be the head football coach at the University of Texas, and then be the head football coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and
You might have been able to do pretty well.
yeah, and you know, my line before the Cowboys had such a great year was, based off what I've seen the last few years, both of them could have used me, and but let's talk about this Super Bowl. What a great Super Bowl! Here you are, Chris Mortensen. You normally are at those Super Bowls.
And I actually went down there for 3 or 4 days. I happened to be in Houston, so I went down and did
That's
some
right.
treatments. I mean,
That's
did some
right.
stuff at MD Anderson, but I was down there for 3 or 4 days. But came home to watch the game with my son, without
that's pretty
and
special.
Mickey. So we had a good time.
Super Bowl 51, down 28-3. The Patriots did not just come back miraculously and tie the ball game, but in overtime defeated the Atlanta Falcons 34-28. It was epic. Mort, break it down for us and tell us your thoughts.
Well, as we were watching the game, I mean, when they kept saying no team's ever come back from more than 10 points down, I knew once they start talking about statistics like that statistic means nothing to me. But when Falcons went up 28-3, you know, you sit there and say they're going to win this game because really they're probably about a field goal away or another touchdown. There's 18, 19, 20 minutes left to play in terms of, and so yeah, I mean at that point. But then there were things that were going on in that game, and I know Alex, being a football coach himself, was saying, you know, they need to be careful here. They need to be careful. The situational football. They need a few more first downs. Talking about the Atlanta Falcons team, and so, you know, we were actually not saying this is locked up for Atlanta. We're sitting there saying, oh, that's 28-9, even if they missed a two-point conversion. We knew then that Bill Belichick, the Patriots coach, and arguably now the greatest coach of all time, who is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady, we knew that he was capable of doing this. And Teddy Bruschi, who has played in 5 of those Super Bowls for the Patriots, he also works at ESPN now. Teddy had told me earlier in the week when I was in Houston, he said, when you're on defense, he goes, even with all the television timeouts, he goes, you start sucking air when you're on defense more, and the game starts breaking in the offense's favor. So when Atlanta failed to convert in a couple of offensive situations, it was like, well, we know what Tom Brady's going to do in the last quarter. We don't know about the Falcons because they hadn't been there in 19 years, and none of those players had been there. And so it was truly remarkable to watch, and certainly a great testimony and witness to anybody who believes game over in the third quarter. Yeah. And we actually saw history made in terms of the National Football League. A tremendous finish, and a very sad finish if you're from Atlanta. You know, Sure. We raised Mickey, and we raised our family in Atlanta, and very close to Arthur Blank, the owner, and his wife Angie, who actually used to be in our Sunday school class at First Baptist in Douglasville, and good friends of Mickey. So, you know, there was a little bit of sadness for Arthur and whatever, but at the same time, you know, you learn to appreciate greatness in that field, and we certainly witnessed greatness with the Patriots.
No question about it. It was pretty remarkable, wasn't it? Well, NFL draft, which I've seen you there numerous times.
It's a goal to get there. By the way, I've missed a lot of goals that I set for myself. Yeah. I expected to be at last year's draft, but there was no chance of that.
Are you going to be there this year?
I plan to be there.
Wonderful. I hope to see you there. Anything out there that you think could become a game changer looking at the draft?
No. I think...
That settles it.
Well, it's a team sport. I mean, you know, we talk about, find Tom Brady. Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. You had to look at, I think Scott Pioli, who was the general manager of the Patriots, and still has a picture of the tight end they drafted the round before they took Tom Brady, who didn't make the team, by the way, on his wall, just to remind him, just give him a dose of humility that if he was so smart, you wouldn't have waited to the 199th pick in the 6th round to take Tom Brady. So you don't know. I think what people do with their draft picks, the ones that need quarterbacks. I mean, somebody go Tom Brady's backup, Jimmy Garoppolo, or are they going to trade draft picks to get him? Those are going to be draft day stories. Or Kirk Cousins of the Washington Redskins in San Francisco going to trade for him. Deshaun Watson, we got his coach from Clemson, Dabble Sweeney, saying, you pass on him, you're passing on Michael Jordan, whereas other people on film who are very good evaluators says, no, he's not Michael Jordan of football. So quarterbacks always carry the storyline. It's not a great quarterback draft, but that's how you build your teams. They're 53-man rosters. Bill Belichick traded his best defensive player midway through the season, and they got better on defense. And he traded his best pass rusher in the offseason, and they still got better on defense. And so it's just kind of a reinforcement that football is a team game. Great coaches develop players, and it's nice to have Tom Brady as your quarterback.
Yeah.
And you found him in the 6th round.
Yeah. Hey, well, listen, a couple of questions left before we get to the end today, but because there's so many people here today that are Dallas Cowboy fans. And
Are there? How many Cowboy fans? Since he said that, let's make sure.
Look at that. See, there's hundreds and hundreds of them here.
Hundreds. There are several.
I mean, it's amazing. So, I mean, we can barely keep their hands down. Now, well, but tell us where Tony Romo's going.
Well, Tony and Jerry Jones, they do have a special relationship,
Yeah.
And Tony wants to play. I mean, I think Jerry would love it if Tony said, I want to be your backup quarterback for the next 3 years before I retire. But the competitor in him says, I want to play, even though he's had these injuries, and we know it was surgeries. And Jerry's going to do right by Tony. And I believe that means he's either going to release him, which is Tony can go pick a spot with maybe an understanding between the two. You're not going to go quarterback the Washington Redskins in our own division. But I think there's a part of, like if Tony said, hey, we can work this out and I'll be Dak's backup, if something happens to Dak, I'll play. Right now, that's not the indication we're getting. So when we're looking with Tony, whether it's release or trade, and we're thinking it'll be a release, we're talking about the Houston Texans, which is a short flight from Dallas. You stay in Texas, they're in the AFC. They have an excellent team. If they had a quarterback, they may have beaten the Patriots in the playoffs if you watch that game. So that's one. Tony's wife Candace is expecting a 3rd child in August, so maybe proximity is a good thing. Kansas City Chiefs, even though they have Alex Smith, they've popped up as a possible team. Denver is another one that has popped up, so Houston is the one that makes sense. They signed somebody for a lot of money. Can they work it within their salary cap? But Houston's the one that makes sense. Denver is certainly a possibility. Kansas City, Alex Smith has done well, but you could say Tony's an upgrade, but Tony's got to prove he can stay healthy. So what do you pay that? Well, how much do you pay Tony? It's on faith and production in the past, but that production goes back a ways. But I don't know what. You can call me. When you get that scoop, call me up.
I'm sure you'll be the first to
The
call.
Chicago Bears is the only other one I'd say, but the Bears are not. Tony's going to want to play for a contender. You can argue whether they're going to be a contender or not. They'll get some people back. Dow Loggins, by the way, a former Hog, a Razorback player and a good friend. Probably one of Alex's best friends. He's the offensive coordinator. Actually did a heck of a job last year with a lot of injuries. Their general manager, Ryan Pace, was a teammate of Romo's at Eastern Illinois. And so, there's a thought, can they convince him to come there? But I don't think they meet Tony's requirement of being a contender. They're also in the NFC, so I don't know. I actually have not talked to Tony lately.
It'll be interesting. Final question, Chris Mortensen. Sunday, February the 4th, 2018, Super Bowl 52 will take place in the new $1 billion plus stadium called the U.S. Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. And give us 4 to 6 teams that you think will really compete for the championship?
It's a bad question.
No, it's a great question. No,
It's a
you're
great-
on this. You're on my
Oh,
side.
it's a bad answer about
All
to
right?
come
Let's
up.
just act like you're live
Well,
audience.
4 to 16, we get to say the Patriots because they're the Patriots.
Yeah,
Right? We get,
that's a given.
I mean, we know they're going to be one of those 4 to 6 teams. You know, there's some people think that Miami will take a step up this year. The problem is they play in the Patriots division. Dallas should remain very good and get better on defense. Green Bay Packers, I think, will get better. They were really handicapped on defense. We know what Aaron Rodgers is. He's by far the most skilled quarterback in the league. I don't think you ever count out Seattle. I think they're going to get better. I think Kansas City, if they get Romo, how many teams are we up to right now? The Raiders. Some of the same teams. I better say the Falcons in case Arthur Blank sees this or hears this.
Yeah.
No, but the problem with we're giving you the same teams, and we know somebody. Pittsburgh Steelers, another team. We know there's going to be somebody that we didn't see coming.
Right.
Or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going to make a jump. So that's why I say it's a tougher answer.
Let
And
me
the Houston
say-
Texans. What if Romo goes to Houston and stays healthy?
Yeah.
There's a team.
Yeah. Let's close with this. I want you to take a minute or two, and now that you've been through what you've been through and you're in or where you are, will you just talk to them about life for a minute?
Oh, well, all I know is that I think when I mentioned the fact that I prayed, asking God to allow me to finish this race stronger than what I think I had been running it. Now, I've always loved life. I mean, I really have. And we're saying, listen, we have great faith, and we know this is just a small part of our eternal journey. But even with that being said, we're selfish about this time on earth. I'm selfish about, my time with Mickey and Alex and family, and even continuing on with my job. I mean, I love those things. So life, and I've always had. I mean, one thing I did learn also. I mean, I've always kind of been a glass half full guy. I learned that is me. I mean, I've not had. Like I said, I haven't gone through a pity party, a self-pity party. I think I had one time in July when I wondered whether I was going to make it 4 more months. It was maybe, but I don't know. I felt sorry for myself. But the one thing I've learned about life again is just that the more I'm dependent upon God, the better life is. And then the love of others, the support of the prayers of a lot of people, make you a better prayer warrior for those who needed prayer. And so I think my life is in full color. Craig Sager passed away, and everybody knows. I think Craig Sager was a friend of ours going back to Atlanta. And I saw Craig at MD Anderson on the day he was told, you don't have much longer to live. But Craig had one of those attitudes that was just wonderful, and he lived his life in full color. I'd like to think that that's what we're living our life. And my life, I feel like, is in full color, and vibrant, and hopeful, and to me, it's only going to get better.
Amen. Chris Mortensen, I want to pray for you for a moment. Father, I thank you for my friend. Thank you for his contribution to our lives today. And we recognize that life is a gift from God, and we pray that you would continue to heal this brother's body, and we will give God praise. Amen.
Amen.
Chris Mortensen, we love you. We believe in you. We will pray for you. And folks, has this been great? I tell you.
Well, thank you.
Chris.
Thank you. And if you prayed for me, I can't thank you enough, even if you thought about me. But and like I'd like to say, pray for my wife Mickey too. She's been hit with her own melanoma here lately. So, and everybody knows the caregivers, I think, need more prayer and strength than even the patient himself. I think everybody would say amen to that. Thank you.
Right.